This is International Master David Pruess for Chess.com, and today you are going to learn absolutely one of the most important strategic elements of chess, which is how to win material. And in chess, there are various different kinds of advantages you can have at any point in time, and the most obvious, the most common, the most significant is a material advantage, which just means having more pieces or more valuable pieces than what your opponent has. And it's also one of the easiest kinds of advantages to convert. So it's very important to know about this, and there will be another video about how to convert it when you have a material advantage. But today I'm going to tell you the 3 ways, generally speaking, that you will win material. The first way is more tactical than strategic. It's basically just that you have to stay alert all the time for tactical opportunities. So I've chosen a set of examples from a super tournament, meaning a tournament where super grandmasters were playing, and super grandmasters are grandmasters who are really highly rated, like in the top 30 or 40 in the world. So these guys are really, really good, but watch what happens here, how white wins material. Black has just played their knight to e6, attacking white's rook. White backs up the rook. Black plays a normal move here, h5, securing the queen's position by controlling g4, typical positional move. And I'm giving his king an extra square. And now white pounced with knight c7. And this move attacks the knight, which is defending the rook, while opening up the attack of these 2 rooks. And you'll see that however black plays here, they're going to lose a rook for a knight. For example, if they take white's rook here, white can take this rook with check, right, and then recapture on d2, which will leave white with the queen and rook against the queen and knight. Or as happened in the game, black took the knight and then white took the rook. And white had rook versus knight and went on to convert this game and win the tournament. That was Etienne Bacrot playing white. And now our next example, which is of a different kind, which is that sometimes you win material by building a positional attack that your opponent can't handle. This is a really, really good way to win material, and it might be almost as common as just noticing your opponent's tactical mistakes and jumping on those. This can include, when I say building a positional attack your opponent can't, defend against, this can include an endgame where you've got 1 or 2 pieces and you encircle a weak pawn, you attack it with your king, and then you shoulder their king away from that pawn or zugzwang him away, and then you capture 1 pawn. That can be a winning positional attack. But here you have an example that's more of a middle game, and here's how it goes. White has a queen against 2 rooks, so it's a very complicated position. Opposite colored bishops increase the chances that you can create a strong attack, and black hasn't yet got any good way to develop this rook, so white starts trying to build up an attack. So here's how he does it. He moves his queen, attacking this pawn, and also looking on this diagonal. Black defends the pawn with rook b7, and he's going to want to try and keep this queen out from penetrating into his position so she can attack things. But it's going to be hard to do. So b5 check is played. Black blocks with the rook. I believe black didn't block with the knight because black wanted the rook to be able to block on e8 if white had brought the queen in here, aiming at this square. So black blocks with the rook, and white just plays a simple move, just calmly with his bishop. h6 by black, h4 by white, getting rid of back rank mate. Black has a square for his rook now, though not an exciting one. Moves his rook here, and now white starts trying to penetrate with the queen. First aiming into c8. But black just plays bishop f5 because the rook can block and come back and forth like this. So now black's preparing to move the g-pawn to get his king out and his rook into the game. And now white switches the bishop back here to attack. And black is unable to untangle the pieces. So black plays f6, trying to fight out. Bishop a3. So white's already going to win some material. He's going to win the rook for his bishop. And black took on e5, trying to activate his own passed pawns here. And queen takes pawn is a pretty decent move because this pawn is fast, but white played something even better, winning more material. Check. The king has to come up, and now knight takes d5, attacking the rook an extra time. And this rook has nowhere to escape because if it moves back to e8, white has queen d7 check and wins material. Black has to block with the knight, I guess, and white takes with the knight. And if black takes the knight in this position here, white can take with check right here. And after this, white can take, and white is going to win even more material, and that'll make the endgame easy enough. And if black does something like pawn takes pawn after knight d5, white will take once, and then pin the knight with the queen. Again, creating an attack that black just can't deal with. So that is another common way to win material, is you build up some kind of an attack, in this case on some dark squares against a king with discoordinated pieces, and when your opponent can't quite cover your threats, you're able to win material against his somewhat discoordinated pieces. Now, let's see an example that's kind of a mix of those two, a mix of building a positional attack and being alert for tactical opportunities, because really that's when you're going to win materials, when you're putting some pressure on your opponent and then you're also alert to your opportunities to hurt them. So in this position, by the way, that last game was won by Sergei Karyakin, who tied for first with Bakro, and this game here is also played by Karyakin. These are the two games that he won in the tournament. So knight f5 is played, and you see white is in a position where he's trying to exert some pressure against these two squares in black's camp. So white plays knight f5. Now black was afraid that if he takes and white takes, he can never really deal with these two pieces here. He can't play g6 because of taking on f6. So this queen's on a really nice square here. It's hard to just lodge this bishop, and this knight will join the attack later. So black doesn't give up his light squared bishop and plays queen to e6, but that gets him into something even worse. Karyakin alertly plays bishop to h6, targeting g7. And first of all, black can't take it because queen g3 check, king over, and checkmate, or knight g4, check, here. And now there are a number of decent moves for white, but knight e7 check is pretty much what's going to happen here probably. King g7, knight takes g6, bishop takes g4, knight f8, and white has a winning endgame. So he strikes with bishop h6, attacking the g7 pawn, and black played knight takes e4. His other possible defense would be the knight coming back to e8 to defend g7, and in that case, white would just move his queen over to attack g7 again. And now g7 can only be defended further by the queen. If you play g6, white will capture the rook. So if the queen defends this way, knight e7 wins the queen. So let's look at queen f6. Now white has the move bishop g5, cleverly switching directions. Queen moves back here, and then bishop e7, and white traps this rook, winning material. So the game went knight takes e4, and white played queen to g4. If white just captures this knight, he's losing his own knight on f5, right? And losing his attack against g7. So white has to calculate that he'll continue the attack here, threatening checkmate. And black's only defense against the g7 square at this point was g6. And so white now took on e4 with the knight. Black takes here to recover the piece he's down, and white will trade queens now and then pick up the rook on f8 at the end. And white easily won this endgame and then tied for first in the tournament. Now, there's a third quite common way to win material, which has perhaps more to do with your opponent than with you. And it goes like this. Here is the game. White has been positionally outplaying black with a nice knight on c6, a light square. This is another different way you can play opposite colored bishops. you put your knight on a nice light square where this bishop can't attack it, but it controls all these dark squares. And so white has actually managed to shut in and make black's bishop a really bad piece. You see, with this nice knight placement here. On top of that, he's advanced a nice majority in the center, gaining a lot of space there. So white has a very, very nice position. And at this point, he played h3, trying to kick the knight back to h6 and sort of continue to send the black pieces back in abject retreat. And at some point, when you push your opponent, building up your advantage, a lot of people, rather than letting their pieces all get pushed back to bad squares, are going to sacrifice material in order to stay active. At least good players are going to do this. So these being super GMs, black didn't retreat his knight. He played rook takes g3, h takes g4, and now you see you've got a situation where white has a piece against two pawns, but of course it's a messy position where his king's a bit exposed and black has some counterplay. Now, what do you do when your opponent sacks material? You capture it, but you better be ready to defend well. And white was and did eventually win this game, but this is another way to win material. Basically, you push your opponent back to the wall until they refuse to keep backing up and they sack material to try and stay active. And that's definitely one of the hardest kinds of material advantage to convert, because by definition, your opponent's probably active and making threats against you. But it's one of the most common ways to win material. So be aware that that is coming up in your games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you around on Chess.com.